going live. Yeah. Yeah, live.
Namaste.
सुमधुर वीणा मुरली संगीत नृत्य सम्मिलित सद्भावनार्पित सुमधुर वीणा मुरली संगीत नृत्य सम्मिलित सद्भावनार्पित गीत नृत्य भगवद्गीत नृत्य गीत नृत्य
Namaste, a warm welcome and greetings of Guru Purnima to all of you. GITA-NRITYA, under the high patronage of Embassy of India, Paris, and Carnatic Conservatory, Paris, along with Samanvay Foundation for Indian Performing Arts and Samskara Bharati, India, we bring to you GITA-NRITYA, an interactive rendezvous with internationally acclaimed artists, gurus, and dance exponents. An interesting dialogue on reflecting of Bhagavad-Gita in our lives through art, music, dance, and various other allied fields. Concept for the Bhagavad-Gita in arts is by me, Veena Murthy Vijay, and music and the entire concept is conceived and produced by Bhavana Pradyumna and Pradyumna Kandade, who is with us today. This is the fourth episode of GITA-NRITYA session, season 1. I request all of you, audience, to come back with your reflections and post them so that we can mention your comments and reflections in our ensuing episodes. The Bhagavad Gita presents a balanced philosophy of life. There are two paths in human life: pravritti, the path of action, and progress, nivritti, the path toward contemplation and spiritual perfection. Through pravritti, a welfare society is established by improving the economy and political systems. Progress in society necessarily implies concerned efforts of its people. Cooperation, togetherness, and mutual love and understanding are the hallmarks of pravritti, leading to state called abhyudaya. This leads to a healthy nation and a healthy world altogether. Through nivritti, a value-oriented life is achieved, which is based on the inner spiritual dimensions of humanity. The hallmarks of nivritti are change in attitude towards one's own self, towards life and situations, towards other people, work, and concentration and purification of mind. This leads to a state called, in our scriptures, are nishreyasa, the spiritual growth. This progress and material development on the individual and social planes have to be accompanied by inner spiritual growth based on universal value system. Knowing one's true nature is a much necessity, if not more, as external material progress without the spiritual dimension, the boat of human progress becomes sailless, and without material progress, it is rudderless. A boat, in order to serve its purpose, needs both rudder and sail. The Bhagavad Gita, preached by Sri Krishna, impacts both these aspects. It is widely accepted, impartially deals with both these aspects and presents a balanced philosophy of life. As a result, it is a scripture with universal acceptance. We, from this Karnataka Conservatory and Samanvay, intend and envisage to bring the reflections on this great book. Now, another truth to be noted is that the pravritti field of life is not beyond the pale of spirituality. Nivritti is spiritual life and so is pravritti. This is the approach of Bhagavad-Gita to human life. GITA-NRITYA envisages to bring in these two aspects and reflect upon them through Bhagavad-Gita and art. This philosophy of Sri Krishna, whom Swami Vivekananda describes as the sanest man ever, is now rising to its feet. This idea will spearhead the religious movement of mankind in the coming centuries. These are some of the thoughts from Sri Swami Yadava Devananda from Sri Ramakrishna Math. And today, we have one such great scholar who has followed this path in his life and has been relentlessly making a remarkable contribution to the world is Mr. Sri Nilesh Oak. Sri Nilesh Oak ji, namaskar, we welcome you. Sri Nilesh Oak ji is an author, researcher, speaker, corporate consultant. He holds BS and MS in chemical engineering and an executive MBA. He has published 3 books and writes extensively on ancient Indian history. Nilesh helps Indians become aware of deep antiquity of Indian civilization so that they truly comprehend, present, or defend the grand narrative of India, unlike most other Indic researchers, because he builds through scientific acumen and logical reasoning. He is adjunct faculty at the Institute of Advanced Sciences, Dartmouth, Atlanta, USA. He has given a number of blogs based on Indic studies. The sophistication, precision, and accuracy of ancient Indian astronomy, unparalleled anywhere in the rest of the world, was driven by the desire for reliable sustenance, good health, commerce, and global navigation. In Sri Nilesh's words, he says, the zest to know deeply the epic Mahabharata led him to study Bhagavad-Gita, which in turn became his major research project. Let's meet Sri Nilesh today to reflect upon the Bhagavad-Gita. We welcome you, Nilesh ji.
Namaskar, everyone, and it's my honor and thank you for inviting me.
So, Bhavana, do we continue with the doodle video?
Yes, we would have to introduce Veena ma'am. Thank you.
And it is my primary duty, sorry to interrupt you, Pradyumna, to introduce Bhavna. It has been Bhavna and my ever-focused endeavor to find ways to contribute a drop to the ocean of Indian culture. Carnatic Conservatory of Paris, CC Paris, is one such initiative based out of Paris, France. CC Paris is not-for-profit association which creates new platforms, brings together new artists and legends alike. We collaborate and present highest quality of Indian arts and love to take the beauty of Carnatic music and Indian arts to the world audience. They have been doing a marvelous job across the borders. CC Paris has conceptualized multiple events: Paris Tyagaraja Aradhane, Nrityanada, Sanatana Raga and Yoga, Bhagavad-Gita doodle videos, Amarakosha doodle videos by young little prodigy, her son. Latest to come to life is the collaboration GITA-NRITYA, which is conceptualized by me and Bhavana from Samanvay Arts Foundation and also Samskara Bharati. CC Paris has also published books in English, French, Spanish, Sanskritam, Kannada, and Tamil. Few of the books are Children's Carnatic, a book to build a storytelling approach to introducing Indian arts to children. Approach to Music, The Indian Way, Volume 1 to Volume 12, and Raga and Yoga, a book which would open new research possibilities. This book was released on Indica Yoga platform as part of the International Day of Yoga 2021 Yoga Festival. Bhavna Pradyumna has worked extensively with Arthur Thomison to introduce Carnatic vocal, Veena and Odissi dance in Conservatory of Bobigny, France. This is the first ever time in the history of France and in the history of Europe that Indian arts will be offered as a long-term course. CC also provides free Bhagavad-Gita classes. They also provide spoken Sanskritam language courses. And they provide music certificate courses and credits for music courses through institutions like S. Vyasa University and Shivananda Yoga Ashrama. CC follows and works towards the social media channels FB and Twitter and CC Global Paris, YouTube Carnatic Conservatory of Paris. In all these social media platforms, you can follow CC.
Namaste,
Thank you
ma'am.
so much, Veena ma'am. So just to continue, even today's event is being relayed live on YouTube. So we have audience following the event on YouTube as well.
So,
To say a few words about Dr. Veena Murthy Vijay. We are honored to be collaborating with Dr. Veena Murthy Vijay ma'am. Her contributions are immense. Dr. Veena Murthy Vijay is a danseuse with a commitment towards the propagation of Indian dance tradition all over the world. Veena's rare grace and dramatic talent have taken her to great heights in her chosen art form, Kuchipudi. Veena's experiment in choreography resulted in numerous productions based on varied social themes, proving her comprehensive command over the ethos of Kuchipudi. In an illustrious career spanning over 3 decades, Veena has performed to packed houses in India and abroad. She has also held workshops and lecture demonstrations in various universities abroad. Dr. Veena has several titles to her credit. She has been honored with State Award Karnataka Kalashri by Karnataka GITA-NRITYA Academy for the year 2009-2010. Veena is the director of Sri Rajarajeshwari Kala Niketan, Bengaluru, imparting training in Bharatanatyam and Kuchipudi style of dance to her students. Samanvay has been her brainchild, a dance company and an institution imparting training in dance for academic diplomas and degree courses, which are job ready and affiliated to Bangalore University. Veena is one of the first dancers to present traditional Tibetan hymns to Indian dance in her production for world peace. This was presented in USA through Department of Cultural Arizona State, USA. Her productions Agastya Rishi, Chitrapata, Ganga Gauri Vilasam, Chitrangada, Stri, Harmony, and many more have been well appreciated across the globe. Most recent magnum opus opera, Chilapadikaram, was a grand success. She has been chosen as one of the experts in the Council of Nadanirajanam, a Tirumala Tirupati Devasthanam TV channel. Veena has authored a book, Tere, tracing the presence of Kuchipudi in Karnataka. Awarded with an honorary doctorate for restructuring of 20 new Adavu patterns, footsteps in Kuchipudi based on Karnataka Yakshagana. Sri Ramanuja Vaibhavam. I've witnessed this. Believe me, it's wonderful. Sri Ramanuja Vaibhavam is the most recent magnum opus production, which has received wide appreciation for its authentic production value. Veena is a member of Vision Group for Higher Education, Government of India. Syndicate member of Karnataka State, Dr. Gangubai Hanagal Music and Dance Performing Arts University. Director for Cultural Committee, Foreign Investors Council, India. She has been recently nominated as the Governing Council member of Kalakshetra Foundation, Chennai by the Ministry of Culture, Government of India. So, Veena ma'am, again, we are humbled. We are blessed to be collaborating with you to bring GITA-NRITYA to light. So with these few words, now I would hand over to Bhavana to continue today's program.
Yeah, so we'll start with the doodle video, and then followed would be a time to reflect session with Sri Nilesh Oak ji.
Under the high patronage of the Indian Embassy, France, Carnatic Conservatory of Paris presents the Bhagavad-Gita, Episode 24. Adharmabhibhavat Krishna pradushyanti kulastriyah trishu dushtasu varshneya jayate varna sankarah. When unrighteousness prevails, O Krishna, the women of the clan become corrupt, and thus intermixture of varnas. Arjuna says that when the unrighteousness of a society reflects on a vulnerable woman, pushing the woman in the path of unrighteousness leads to the degradation of the society. Varnas were classified based on the occupation. The four varnas that existed are Kshatriya, the one who protected; Vaishya, the one who did business; Brahmana, the learned one who read the scriptures; Shudra, the one who ensured the smooth functioning of the other three varnas. While the men did the earning of the bread, the women taught, lived, and passed on the family cultures, traditions, and practices. Age-old society were well organized with defined roles and responsibilities, not just at a social level, but also at a family level. Women have donned multiple hats, and they have always been the binding force in a family. Losing men results in burdening women with additional responsibilities, which will add to their distress and affect their well-being. Time to reflect. Would one address the unrighteousness in a society, or would the society focus on the unrighteousness of a woman? Leave your comments in the comment section. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om.
Thank you so much for that, Bhavana. Nilesh ji, it's time to reflect as we always end the Bhagavad Gita doodle videos with a time to reflect. Now it's time to reflect with the legend. What more does Bhagavad Gita say about Varnas, or what is the essence that is brought about in Bhagavad Gita on Varnas? So if we can continue the thread. You are on mute, so you may have to unmute and right. So
All right, my apologies. All right, so first thing before I get into adding something to the today's Varna doodle video, very beautifully done video in such a short time. It's kept, I don't know how long it was, but definitely I felt like less than 3 minutes, and very effectively it conveyed what it needs to convey. Some of
Thank
the
you.
words, and it cannot be just a coincidence, Pradhyanaji. So what I heard when Vinaji was talking, her organization Samanvay, and in her prelude, she discussed the word abhyuday. And so these all come together. So in a society, for a prosperous and peaceful society, a society that is vibrant and growing, we need a certain structure. And actually this Varnashram system provides that structure. Varnashram system provided that structure. So anytime that structure is disturbed, some of the things that were mentioned in that doodle video come into the picture. To add a few things, for example, in Bhagavad-Gita, like Bhavanaji quoted that beautiful verse from the first and second chapter there. The Krishna also says, in explaining this Varnashram system, he says, Chatur Varnyam Maya Srishtam. It is my creation in the sense of the creation of a Paramatma. And how is this creation? What is this Varna based on? It is based on a Guna Karma. That's what he says, Guna Karma Vibhagasha. Something very natural division of society for the well-being of the society. So Guna Karma Vibhagasha. So Guna is in a sense of, you can say, the ability. Karma, you can say in the sense of inclination. So Guna Karma Vibhagasha. I will bring another metaphor from Japanese civilization. Number of you might have heard this Ikigai, something called Ikigai, like 4 circles, big 4 circles that overlap each other. And in a simple way, what they talk about is, what is it that you love to do, you as an individual? What is it that you are good at? And usually that is something people should pursue their profession because they are good at it. What do you do, like in the sense of profession, but now in the sense of vocation? And that depends on what is required in the society. So like, I'm a chemical engineer, but in a practical way, I never purely worked as a chemical engineer in all my life, because so that may be my profession, but as a vocation, whatever was relevant, whatever was required at that time. So what you end up doing, so to say, and then what society needs, and that tells you what is your kartavya, what is your natural duty, what is your swadharma. I think so. Bhagavad-Gita brings this together, very beautifully described in the Japanese framework of Ikigai. And quick 2 points I want to make on this additional, which do not directly come from Bhagavad-Gita, but they are elaborated by Krishna again, doing in a Uddhav Gita, in the Bhagavad Puran. And the metaphor I will talk about is this. So people can do what they would like to do based on what they love, what they are good at, what is available in the society that can help their sustenance, their personal sustenance, and what society needs. Having said that, just like when we are driving on the road, you may be driving in the car that you like, you may go in the direction you would like to go, but there are certain minimum common rules of traffic. It's something similar given in Bhagavad Puran, again by Krishna to Uddhava, where I call this common minimum program. Okay, so for example, when it comes to the Varna, for example, this is Ahimsa Satyam Asteya Akama Krodha Lobhata Bhuta Priya Hitehacha Dharmoyam Sarva Varnika. So the basic moral standards are to be followed by people of any varna. It doesn't matter what is your profession, what is your vocation, what you love, and in what way you are serving the society. And one more thing that we didn't talk about, or actually 2 more. One is a jati, because that gets confused globally when people try to understand Indian civilization. So jati, think of jati as a profession or as a vocation. Okay, so that sometimes get confused with a casta, because caste is not even an Indian word, but that did got attached to jati, and that's where the confusion began. And lastly, one more thing, ashram. So for an individual, as you go through your life, so there's adolescence and then the mature age, and then you turn towards retirement, and finally, like, really going away from everything. There also there is a common minimum program, and Krishna says this, Sarvashrama Prayuktoyam Niyama Kulanandana. He's telling to Uddhava. He says, Madbhava Sarva Bhuteshu Mano Vak Kaya Sayama. Sayam, and Vinaji mentioned the Samanvay. If you have to summarize Bhagavad Gita in one word, that will be Samanvay, Sayam, Samyak, balance. Okay. It says there has to be a balance in every individual life, and also therefore in the society, between the different varnas. And what is that? Mano, Vak, Kaya. The balance of a mind, the intellect, and the body. So these are the things I want to add to the beautiful Varna video that you just played.
Nilesh ji, you look very young, definitely. And Bhagavad Gita is conceived or taken such that only older people would study Bhagavad Gita, or it is very philosophical or very spiritual. But how did your journey begin? Like, when did you start learning Bhagavad Gita, and how did it become a part of your research?
Well, I was very lucky, I would say, and that is where the role of a samskara comes in. The previous generation, the existing generation, let's say, we as parents, yes, we talk about the Pitru rune and Deva rune and Samaja rune and whatnot, but we also we actually owe it to our next generation. And I was lucky that my parents did a good job. I became familiar with Bhagavad Gita. Actually, Bhavanaji, I don't even remember when I became familiar. I was that young. And my mother introduced me to Vinoba. Now, some of you may know some of the audience may know the name, but he was a great associate of Mahatma Gandhi, and in his own right, a master. Not many people know that every time Mahatma Gandhi started any revolutionary movement for the freedom, he used to always go and consult with Vinoba. In a way, he was his disciple. Vinoba was Gandhiji's disciple, but also a master in a certain sense. He used to always consult. So Vinoba has translated Bhagavad Gita into Marathi in the very same emitters as the Gita-I. So that's what my mother introduced to me. And then when I went into the school, a certain school, a high school that I went 8th, 9th, and 10th grade, the school had a system, which is again very lucky one. I may not have thought it that way at the time, but it was truly a lucky coincidence that we had to remember, each class had to have by heart one adhyaya of a Bhagavad Gita in every year. So without much effort, in those 3 years, I had 3 adhyaya by heart. And that just got me into so much thing that I never left Bhagavad Gita. In fact, as Vinaji mentioned, I have research in many other areas. But I can always tell you, it's just like a quarterback. I mean, you can go to different locations, different places, but like come home. My home is Bhagavad Gita. So I always come back to Bhagavad Gita.
So, like you say that you say it so beautifully that you don't even remember from when you are associated with Bhagavad Gita, and how you've always come back to it. So it should have had some influence on your life at different stages, because you spoke about different stages of life. So how has Bhagavad Gita influenced you over different stages of your own life?
Thank you. So I will take maybe 2 or 3 specific points. As I said, it remains my inspiration every day, every morning. Like in American context, Henry David Thoreau, or Emerson, they were also known as Boston Brahmins, to use the word of Varna. And Henry David Thoreau used to say he always, every morning, he bathes in the intellect of Bhagavad Gita. So because of that initial introduction, so the curiosity of Bhagavad Gita, or curiosity about the Indian civilization, grew out of Bhagavad Gita. And I had 2 questions, and that's Bhagavad Gita actually ended up answering it. I did not know that, although I knew a little bit of Bhagavad Gita. what you see, or what I experienced growing up in a small village in India, is that sometimes people will say, one approach, that everything is there in our ancient Indian narratives. And the other side, other approach, they will say, well, there is not much there. It is more of a rituals. And none of these extreme positions made sense to me. So I said, well, I need to find the answers for myself. And again, Krishna emphasizes that, which is to say, the curiosity is a good start, but that is not the end. Many people will start with a curiosity, they will ask the question to someone and then hope for an answer. And what Krishna is telling, or what Bhagavad-Gita is telling us, is yes, you always go for assistance. Those are your gurus. Okay. And in a Bhagavad Puran, again, you hear that for every single specific aspect in life, if you look around, you'll find always someone who is essentially an embodiment of that particular virtue. And for that particular virtue, he becomes your guru. So that's one insight that I had. Then the school that I mentioned, the Bodha Vakya for the school was one particular line from Bhagavad Gita. Nahi jnanena sadrishyam pavitram iha vidyate. There is nothing superior to the knowledge, to the jnana. And so in my way, I'm not saying it may be a perfect way, but at that time, I'm talking possibly like a 10-year-old. I interpreted that to mean I have to get knowledge. Okay, there is nothing superior to it. And that made me a voracious reader. I just literally anything that I could have my hands on, including the newspaper. And I used to, in that small village, I was the only one that was, I mean, I'm talking 8 to 10 years old, who is reading the newspaper in my mother tongue Marathi, right from the top left-hand corner to the last page of the bottom right-hand corner, because I'm saying that's how I'm going to get knowledge. So that was a one effect. I'm not saying it's a perfect, but that was a great effect, that I became a voracious reader. In the corporate world, just speeding forward, I would say, number of us would be aware of personality classifications that we do many times when human resources would use that, or in team building we use that, such as, you know, the dividing, understanding our inclination, again going back to that Varna system. Okay, what do we love, what we are good at, what is our style? So for example, people would have our Myers-Briggs classification, or a disc type of classification, like a directorial style of doing, influencing type of style, somebody who likes the data. And to my surprise, when I was looking at it, something was ringing a bell. I'm saying, when I see this 4 classification, I also see that insights in Bhagavad Gita, but I did not know the direct connection until I started digging deep down into this, the origin of Myers-Briggs, the 2 mother and daughter duo who created this. And when I started digging how they came to this, guess what? It led me to Indian civilization, Indian ancient Indian narratives, but actually to a Bhagavad Gita. For example, Bhagavad Gita talks about the 4 types of Udara Bhakta. Artha Jidnyasu, Artharthi, Jnani cha Bharatarshava. So Artha, Jidnyasu, Artharthi, and Jnani. And I could perfectly map them even on the Myers-Briggs or on the disc. So that was another great insight for me. And now my Shraddha started becoming stronger, which is to say, when people used to say, no matter what question you have, the answer is there in Bhagavad Gita. And I'll just end on to answer to your, I mean, this question on the last note. Many of us know the Pareto chart, you know, or many people would know the rule, 80-20 rule, you know, 80% of your revenue comes from 20% of your customers. And this rule is used in many different ways. From Bhagavad Gita, now I call this Krishna's 80-20 rule of thumb or heuristics, but for something else. Because through my corporate career, I was involved in directly, indirectly into many of the mergers and acquisitions. My career was in sales. So you are attempting everywhere, but every deal doesn't turn it into a sale for you. It may not get closed. And Krishna says it beautifully in the 18th chapter. He says, Adhishtanam tatha karta, karanam cha pruthak vidam, vividhascha pruthak cheshta, daivam chaivatra panchamam. So remember that last line, daivam chaivatra panchamam, that 5th one. So there are 5 things that he mentioned: adhishtan, karta, karanam cha, cheshta, and then daiva. So the first four thing he says, you have a goal, you have certain skill set, you have certain tools, you have to use all of this. You do your swadharma. Having said that, that last one, the fifth, Daivam Chaivatra Panchamam, that random chance, probability, right? You have to, it's not in your hands. You have to live it. Okay. Hope that that comes together with your effort. And so I call that 80-20 rule. So because there are 5 elements that he mentioned, so each elements get 20%. 80% are in your hand. You must do it. Leave that 20% to Daivam. So those were my insights.
So wonderful. And you are so wonderfully able to bring the essence of how Bhagavad Gita is relevant at every stage of one person's life, right? So thank you so much for that. So to continue the same thought process, how would you summarize the Bhagavad Gita if we have to initiate someone and say, hey, this is what Bhagavad Gita is in a snippet? So how would you summarize it for them?
Okay, that is a very good question. Again, what you would notice is depending on who you go to ask the question, you might get a different answer. More than likely, we will get a different answer, and that should not surprise us. In fact, that remains the beauty of Bhagavad Gita. If you look at some of the greats who have studied Bhagavad Gita, written commentaries on Bhagavad Gita, they have come from different perspective. If we look at many sampradaya, in our civilization, so Shankara, Adi Shankaracharya would see in a certain way. Now, that is not to say they are at the opposite ends, not so. Each of these interpretations are complementary. Ramanujacharya would say in a certain way. Even Ramanujacharya's guru, okay, Yamuna Muni would say in a slightly different fashion. Madhvacharya would say it in a different way. Jnaneshwara would say in a different way. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would see in a different way. And that's the beauty of it. Now, that sometimes surprises people. So we are looking at the same text and why everyone sees it in a different fashion. That's the beauty of Bhagavad Gita. For example, see, Krishna, if you notice, when Arjuna is asking the question, in some sense, we can say that Krishna never gives a straight answer. Now, of course, he's giving very straight answer. But for example, after the second chapter, and I'll come to that with the other way I'm going to summarize it. But some people, because there are 18 chapters, they will say, well, let's go with 6, 6, and 6. And hey, if it works for you, that's perfectly fine. So I don't think there is one very idealized way of classifying it. But because you asked the question, I would just share what has worked for me and some of the influences. I just mentioned Acharya, Bharat Ratna Acharya Vinoba Bhave. He was, I would say, the single most biggest, largest influence on me. And there were others. For example, in the science fields of Karl Popper, even he's known as the best philosopher of science. When I was reading this is possibly going back now 25 plus years. When I'm reading his books, and again, that was a somewhat answer to the previous question, when I'm reading a best book or series of books on the philosophy of science in the modern sense, modern Western European sense, and everywhere, like it will say, that comes like a, hey, here is what is said in Bhagavad Gita. In fact, before I answer that question, if I may take a digression, I'll say this. This was maybe again 15 years ago. I was reading books by Nassim Nicholas Taleb, if some of you know that name. He's in the finance world. He wrote multiple books, but 2 books I'll mention because that's what I was reading. Fooled by Randomness, like FOOLED, Fooled by Randomness. And another one was A Black Swan. When I read those 2 books, everywhere I was thinking that whatever the whole book is saying, it is beautifully summarized somewhere from the ancient Indian narratives. And more than likely, I was thinking possibly from Bhagavad Gita. But a specific verse was not coming to me. And then I read Black Swan of his. And one day I was taking a shower, and lo and behold, that suddenly the verse that came to me, in fact, that verse I just stated, which is that Adhishtanam tatha karta karanam cha prathak vidam vividascha prathak cheshta daivam chevatra panchamam. So every activity that you do, and he's referring to financial world like stock market, even in stock market, you can do the good analysis of the stock, understand the market basics, decide when to buy a stock, how much to buy a stock. But after that, once you do it, you are done, right? Now you just watch, and that is that 20% Daivam part. But back to answering your question, how would we summarize to somebody who is coming to me? Again, I'm taking this from Vinoba's, and it really helped me. I took it on a Shraddha, saying, let's see what he's saying, if it makes sense. It took me a while. It took me possibly 10 years. But now I'm convinced what a beautiful classification, and I would like to share that with you. So Arjuna and Krishna, that dialogue begins in the first chapter. Arjuna is confused, and Krishna just smiles at him, even in a very tough situation. And in the second chapter, which is known also as a Sankhya Yoga, second Adhyay, as far as I see, Krishna tells us everything that he truly wanted to say as the essence of Bhagavad-Gita, the meaning of Bhagavad-Gita, everything we want to know. So how did it expand? And then Arjun asked the questions. Of course, this is the beauty of a Vyasa, who is writing Mahabharata 18 years after the Mahabharata war. Okay, so Vyasa is bringing the message of Krishna and Arjun conversation to us. But Arjun asks, so now you are telling me to follow the karma, but you're also telling me that the Buddhi Yoga is better than a Karma Yoga. Now you're confusing me. So you're saying Buddhi Yoga is better, but you're asking me to do the karma and fighting. And that's where the Bhagavad Gita, in a way, metaphorically speaking, expands. So Adhyaya 3, 4, 5 is an elaboration of a Karma Yoga, like Karma, Vikarma, Akarma. Then Adhyaya 6, 7, and 8, they are Dhyana Yoga. 6 Adhyayas, everyone knows, focus of Dhyana Yoga. But Adhyaya 7 and 8 is the elaboration of it. Then 9, 10, 11, 12 is a Bhakti Yoga. And although when we study something, say chemistry, physics, we may study, or biology, we may study as separate subjects. But remember, in actual application, we have to bring them together. They actually come together, including mathematics and including other subjects. So we are, as a understanding, we are going this 3, 4, 5 Karma Yoga, 6, 7, 8 Dhyana Yoga, 9, 10, 11, 12 Adhyaya is a Bhakti Yoga. Then 13, 14, 15 Adhyaya of Bhagavad Gita are Jnana Yoga. Then 16 and 17, I see that as a different appendix A and appendix B. One is talking about the Sattva, Raja, Tama, and then the 17, or Devi Prakriti and Asuri Prakriti, the different types of our attitudes and inclination. 17 is talking about the application of what has been done so far in practical ways. And 18 is a summary. So if I can go back again, so 3, 4, 5 is a karma, 6, 7, 8 is a dhyana, 9, 10, 11, 12 is a bhakti, 13, 14, 15 is a jnana. And then there is a summarization of it. But the important point is these are not stand-alone things. In any activity that we do, which is naturally a karma, but we need a focus if you want to achieve the results. We need something that is beyond this, is just doing it for the sake of it. And that inspiration comes from this bhakti. And then, of course, to do the job right, we need a knowledge. So it's not we study them in a separate fashion, but in any particular activity, we have to synthesize them together. And that's such a beautiful Bhagavad Gita provides us that framework.
Wonderful, wonderful. It's the way you said it, the emphasis started from 3, but you said that everything that Krishna had to say, he has said it in Adhyaya 2. So it was interesting for me to notice that he gave everything in 2, and then he started breaking it down and elaborating each of the concepts as we go. So what can you elaborate on what he has summarized in 2? Because you say that involves everything, right?
Yeah, good one again. And I would add before answering that question, which is, that's why I see many times people find this find this a pious confusion, I would say, not in a confusion in the sense of, oh my God, I don't understand it, but says, Krishna is saying this here, and Krishna is saying this another thing here, which is what Arjuna is asking those questions. And therefore, there is one saying that goes with Krishna. He says, and Krishna is always doing that. So Arjuna also asked, like, now, so tell me exactly. So you're saying this, what should I do? And Krishna is, if you notice, Krishna is never prescriptive. He's descriptive. Okay, he will just elaborate. He says, okay, well, let me explain that to you. Ekam sankyam cha yogam cha sapashyati yapashyati. So that is what he says. So he says, should I do this or should I do this? That is what Arjuna is asking. He's not giving a straight answer, as I said, in a way. And therefore, there is one saying about Krishna. It says, Murares Tritiya Pantha. Okay, if you try to ask a binary fashion, should I do A or B? Krishna is not going to give you a straight answer A or B, because the question itself is wrong. He is going to say, well, do C, that is Murares Tritiya Pantha, but that C would be essentially a combination of A and B in the fashion of a Vivek, a discriminating attitude. But back to your question. So what is it that, as I said, that Adhyaya 2 summarizes everything that Krishna wants to say. And then if we have to ask the question, so within Adhyaya 2, is there something, are there few verses that truly summarize it? I would say it is Adhyaya 2 and one specific verse 51. I will say it, and maybe, Bhavanaji can sing that in a beautiful verse, but beautiful voice of hers. Karmajam buddhi yuktahi phalam taktva manishina janma bandha vinirmukta padam gachantam anamayam. So it has got 4 aspects, 4, just like in Anushtup Chanda, we do say it in 4 quadrants, right? So for example, the first portion, half of first quarter, says Sankhya Buddhi and Yoga Buddhi. So that is where Arjuna's confusion comes, So one way he's saying to do Karma Yoga, but Sankhya in the sense of Jnana, like a Buddhi, intellect, he's giving both. So now we have to find a balance, that Samanvay, that Samyak Viveka between those two. Then he's asking in this verse, Krishna is asking to give away the fruit. The famous verse comes afterwards, right? Karmanya vadikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. But right here, phalam tyaktva manishina, and give up the fruit. He's saying that. And he's already giving the summary of even the 5th chapter, which is that Jivan Mukti. To get that moksha, the mukti in that sense, you don't have to wait for this body to fall off. You can experience that mukti right in this life. And therefore, going back to your, whatever the first question you asked, like maybe I didn't even answer, which is to say, why start Bhagavad-Gita study from early childhood? Okay, why as a parents ensure that the children get to it and never let it go? They may, amount of time they may spend may go up and down. And then the last one, the Videha Mukti. Okay, so what will be the outcome if you do this? If you balance that Sankhya Buddhi, Yoga Buddhi, if you give away the fruit, you can experience the moksha right here, the Videha Mukti. Okay, so Videha Mukti, like, which is to say experience that liberation, okay, right in this body, and of course after the body. It's a wonderful way. And then second chapter ends up with what? Those 12 shlok on Sthita Prajna. Sthita Prajna is the gift of Bhagavad Gita to the entire world. You do not find the word Sthita Prajna anywhere in ancient Indian narratives before Bhagavad Gita. So this verse, I would say, summarizes Bhagavad Gita.
So I will
Wonderful. I'll just take 1 second here. We had Sonal Mansingh ji, who actually kicked off our the entire GITA-NRITYA. She was the first chief guest here with Dr. H.R. Nagendra Guruji. Their conversation was so wonderful. And I should say that Sonal Mansingh ji had so many quotes from second Adhyaya. And now it makes more sense that why she was saying that it is second Adhyaya, which is very close to her heart and which has stayed with her. And now I see that it's almost the entire Bhagavad Gita, which she carries with her through second Adhyaya, right? So the way you say it, it's so wonderful. And I also want to just quote that just now, the last week, we completed first Dhyana and first Adhyaya doodle videos. And from next week, we would be starting with the second Adhyaya. And yesterday, we brought together people just to chant along Bhagavad Gita as part of this. So wonderful, wonderful, Nilesh ji. And Bhavana, if you can present that, it would be wonderful for sure. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
कर्मजं बुद्धियुक्ता हि कर्मजं बुद्धियुक्ता हि फलं त्यक्त्वा मनीषिणः कर्मजं बुद्धियुक्ता हि फलं त्यक्त्वा मनीषिणः जन्मबन्धविनिर्मुक्ताः पदं गच्छन्त्यनामयम् पदं गच्छन्त्यनामयम्.
Very beautiful.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Bhavana, for that. Nilesh ji, your research methodology emphasizes on scientific method, empirical evidence, logical reasoning. You bring them all together. Like Dr. H.R. Nagendra Guruji keeps referring to bringing the best of East and West together. He as well brings a lot of like a scientific orientation towards yoga. And you are bringing a lot of scientific approach to ancient scriptures. So can you provide insights into how your research on Bhagavad-Gita had an impact on Mahabharata research, or Mahabharata research had an impact on Bhagavad-Gita? Can you say how you were able to bring them all together?
Yes, I will try, and if I go too long, you can interrupt me and stop me, because this is very much at my heart. So where I began, remember I told you that people would say all the answers are in Bhagavad Gita, and of course Bhagavad Gita is part of Mahabharata. And so out of just a simple curiosity, when I was doing my master's in Canada, again that in chemical engineering, I had done my thesis and there was some time left. I went to the beautiful library, multiple libraries, but one library, the Indian section, the ancient Indian narratives. And see, this is, I'm talking when I was some 20 plus, and still I had not necessarily seen the entire Mahabharata at that point. So just out of curiosity, I said, let me see where exactly the Bhagavad Gita shows up. So I went to the library section, the Bhandarkar Oriental, these many volumes that many of us would have seen. And I knew it was in a beginning of the war and therefore Bhishma Parva. So I pulled this very thick book copy of Bhishma Parva. And not knowing exactly where I would find Bhagavad Gita, I started right from the beginning until I find the familiar passages. And before I found Bhagavad Gita, eventually I did find, I ran into a surprise. And just after like Adhyaya 2 or Adhyaya 3, I'm talking of the Bhishma Parva, not Bhagavad Gita, I ran into elaborate descriptions of astronomy type of descriptions in the Mahabharata right at the beginning of a war. Now, the you said the taking Nagesh, Professor Nagesh said taking the best of the West
East
and the East, right? Again, the place where you are in, the France connection is very significant. Okay, so the Indian astronomy, I mean, the French researchers or some of the French thinkers are exclusively, singularly responsible for introducing the phenomenal ancient Indian astronomy to the Western Europe, like Cassini and Bailey and whatnot. So through the Indian, Jesuit, some of the knowledge came here, and how that Europe became familiar with the Indian astronomy. But that Indian astronomy is so old that was used in a very ingenious fashion to decide, to determine, or to encode the specific historicity, the timing of those historical events into our itihasa literature. So in the Mahabharata and in the Ramayana. Now that was directionally known. Many people have worked for many years. So what I did is this. So this one particular verse that I came across, and I'll not mention it just to keep the time on this, but something astronomically was thought to be impossible by all the leading astronomers of the world. Even I'm talking this 1995, even then. In fact, the verse says that star Arundhati is walking ahead of Vasishtha at the time of Mahabharata war. Now, why is this such a big deal? Because in our times, it's not that way. It is the other way. The Vasishtha is walking ahead of Arundhati as seen from the earth every night. Okay, so this is something we can see every night. And again, that Shraddha comes into the picture. Okay, you need a doubt, but the Shraddha comes into the picture. And I said, why would Vyasa write something that is astronomically impossible, whereas many other astronomy verses make sense? And so I made that particular verse and decipherment of that particular verse as my single point focus. In fact, I was so naive. I mean, the fresh young engineer, you can say. I thought, oh, I know Arundhati, I know Vasishtha, I know astronomy, little bit of astronomy. I'm going to solve this over the coming weekend. How naive I must have been, because it took me 15 years from 1995 to 2009 to just solve the mystery behind that one verse. But it was a revolution in some sense, because when finally I solved it, imagine it's like a linchpin, so everything you are trying to solve, you are not solving the crossword puzzle or a jigsaw puzzle. Then you get that one clue, and suddenly in 2 minutes, you have done the job. Okay, it happened like that because Mahabharata text has more than 300 specific astronomy descriptions, astronomy evidence. And that was not, nobody succeeded in bringing it together. Many people had tried. But once I solved this Arundhati Vasishtha, and that basically showed that the Mahabharata war is only possible between 11,000 BC to 4,500 BC. So it's not possible anytime in the last 6,500 years. And most of the researchers were suggesting things only there, and that's why they were struggling and not succeeding. And guess what? Once I did this, Krishna's mercy, I would say, but all those 300 references just came together beautifully, fitting like a crossword puzzle, a jigsaw puzzle. So that was my experience of it. Now, that time I have not talked of Bhagavad-Gita. In fact, I forgot all about Bhagavad-Gita and did this. But to your question, was there any connection to Bhagavad-Gita? Because remember, Bhagavad-Gita is part of Mahabharata. Now, before answering that question, let me also add something. So what I determined is that the timing of Mahabharata is a 5561 BCE, a very specific year, very specific 18 days for the 18 days of the war, from 16 October to 2 November in a Julian calendar computation, 5561 BC, which is more than 7,500 years ago. To my delight and surprise, this is what I did. I published my first book in 2011. So in the last 10 years now, I have practically found empirical scientific evidence from multiple fields. You just name a field, and if the evidence exists, and if the evidence can be related to the time period of Mahabharata, it perfectly fits with that 5561 BC. And the evidence I have found is from very diverse fields like geology, hydrology, oceanography, climatology, genetics, physical anthropology, genealogy from Puranas, Greek travelers' records about India. You just name it, it points to that direction. But let me answer your Bhagavad Gita question. I did not know, although I knew my Bhagavad Gita, that Bhagavad Gita might have anything that supports that date. And to my surprise, there are few that I found, but I'm going to just mention today one. For example, in the 10th Adhyay of Bhagavad Gita, we call Vibhuti Yoga, everyone knows that. Krishna is explaining in different places, in different individuals, different aspects, how we all can think of Krishna, we can all think of a divinity. Okay, and so one particular verse from that 10th adhyaya is like Bruhat Sama Tatha Samnam Gayatri Chanda Samaham Masanam Margashirshoyam Rutunam Kusumakara. Again, Anushtup Chanda, 4 parts there. So the first 2 we can ignore for this purpose at least. Now the first one, Bruhat Samam Tatha Samnam, has a connection with the music and a dance, right? The Sama Veda, Sama Gayana. Okay, that is in the Sama Gayana, Bruhat Sam, I'm saying, Krishna is saying, I am there. Okay, so anytime Bhavanaji is singing, okay, that divinity comes, okay, shows its presence through that. And that's what Krishna is asserting there, okay, or validating. But the second line, Masanam Margashirshoyam, just I'm going to simplify like 1,000 levels down. Right now, so Krishna is saying Masanam Margashirshoyam, among the lunar months of an Indian calendar system, I am the month Margashirsha. And it should be surprised, right? Why would Krishna say Margashirsha? Especially, again, just like that Arundhati Vasishta issue, that Arundhati is walking ahead at the time of Mahabharata war, but now it is not. Similarly, why Margashirsha? So right now, if we see, Margashirsha comes at the around like December, so around the winter solstice. And so why would that be the case? But remember, that is in our times. What was the time of Mahabharata? Now, using the other evidence that I just mentioned, I had arrived at 5561 BC. That's more than 7,500 years ago. And that made me thinking why Krishna would say Masana Margashirshoyam. So I'm going to now bring it 3-4 points together. Indian calendar also has a calendar that begins with the Sharad Rutu. For example, during the birthday celebration, we say Jivet Sharada Shatam. Okay. Jivet Sharada Shatam, Nandet Sharada Shatam, Vardhet Sharada Shatam, and so on. The Sharad is used in the sense of a year. Now you are 18 years old, 20 years old, and so on. So the calendar also began with the Vasanta Rutu, the spring season. The calendar also began, there was a calendar that also began with the rainy season. That's why we use the word Varsha for a year. The calendar began with the Vasanta Rutu, spring season, that was called Samvatsar. Similarly, there was another calendar, multiple calendars simultaneously existing in the Indian system, Indian civilization. One began with the Sharad Rutu, which is a pre-autumn season. And there are additional references in the Mahabharata which refer to Margashirsha as the first month of the year, multiple times, actually at least 2 times in Anushasan Parva. So now taking those, plus understanding that there is a calendar that begins with the Sharad Rutu, and Krishna is saying, among the months, I am Margashirsha. If you put this together, what we realize, which is actually the fact for 5561 BCE, is that the month Margashirsha was the first month of the Sharad Rutu 7,500 years ago. Okay, and it was the first month of the calendar of that time, and therefore it was called this. So what I'm saying is just the simple statement of 1/4 of a verse, Masanam Margashirshoyam, if we understand by combining with astronomy, it also quickly tells us is this. So 2 months of Sharada Rutu, pre-autumn season. So that's first and a second. And then the 2 months of Hemanta Rutu, which comes after Sharad, first and second. And right now, Margashirsha is at the second. Another astronomy phenomenon tells us that the lunar month of an Indian calendar shifts with respect to season by 1 month every 2,000 years. So if you go 1-2 of a Sharad and 3-4 of a Hemanta, that is where Margashirsha is now. And now we have to go back by 4 months. And remember, for every month shift, we have to go by 2,000 years. So 2,000, 2,000, 2,000, 2,000. If we just add that, just a back of envelope calculation, you can say, it tells us just based on this particular verse of Bhagavad-Gita, Masana Margashirshoyam, by connecting with the Mahabharata evidence, even this particular verse tells us, Mahabharata, when Krishna is saying this happened about 8,000 years ago, 2,000 times 4 months of shift into the season. So this was so fascinating insight for me that I'm saying, wow, I was just simply chanting the Mahabharata Bhagavad Gita verse without realizing its deep implication even for the antiquity of Indian civilization. So Bhavanaji, it would be
Beautiful.
great if you can sing that one. So,
So since
you are on the
it's
mute.
also related to
Pradyanuji.
Samaveda, I have selected a raga called Sama for this. Brihat Sama Tatha Samnam Brihat Sama Tatha Samnam Gayatri Chandasam Aham Masana Margashirshah Margashirshah Aham Ritunam Kusumakarah Ritunam Kusumakarah. Thank you, Nilesh ji, for the opportunity.
Beautiful.
Nilesh ji, it just shows the eyes through which you see is so different from the eyes through which others look at Bhagavad Gita or Mahabharata. It's just so wonderful. A quick check on time. We are a little past 3:30, but maybe we have Nilesh ji with us, and we are more than honored to take his time. Nilesh ji, are you available for a few more questions? Like we have few audience questions as well.
Okay,
So
it
can we
is my pleasure.
continue?
Yeah.
Can we continue for a few more minutes?
Please.
It's
Please.
okay.
Yeah.
Since we were talking about Mahabharata and Gita, and Gita being part of Mahabharata and the entire story, how do you see the exact relationship between Bharata and Gita? It's said Mahabharata encompasses everything that we can find around us. They say there is nothing around us in our life that we experience which is not already said in Mahabharata. And we find, for all the questions we have, we find answers in Gita. So how do you kind of, what is your views on this?
Yeah, great point again. So Gita is simple language. Gita is a essence, so extractions like a clarified butter, So what is the essence of a cow's milk? It's a clarified butter, you might say, for example. So Gita is a essence. And what Mahabharata does, the relationship is so close. And I'll just mention this in another context where some people, academic researchers, and that's all good. Manthan is good. Synthesis is good. Some people are of the opinion, and only opinion, because there is no evidence whatsoever, is that the Gita was added later and so on and so forth. If by that they mean that it was added after 18 years, yeah, that's perfectly fine, because Mahabharata was written after 18 years. But otherwise, what you see is a very beautiful relationship with what is there in the Gita and rest of the Mahabharata. Mahabharata finds a way. I mean, there is a historical narrative that is going on, but that is a purpose of a ityasa, right? Dharmartha kama mokshanam upadesham samanvitam purva vruttam katha yuktam itihasam prachakshate. You are taking an ancient event, okay, and a specific event, purva vruttam katha yuktam, and you are telling in a narrative form. That is the purpose, okay? That is the purpose of a katha. That is the purpose of a nritya, and that is the purpose of a music, to bring this wisdom to everyone in a form that is educational but also entertaining, okay? And that's how it is done. So just to summarize, if I can use a metaphor, think of a river Ganga, which is considered very auspicious, pavitra to the Indian civilization. I mean, right from Mark Twain to all the great French thinkers, intellectuals, refer to that, like Voltaire, for example. So Ganga starts with a Gangotri and reaches all the way to Ganga Sagar in the Bay of Bengal. So it's all auspicious, all pavitra, all revered. Having said that, there are specific locations on that river Ganga which are revered more. Okay, so Gita's place is something like that. So in the case of Ganga, we will say Rishikesh, Haridwar, Prayagraj, Varanasi. This is all Ganga, but they have a special significance. Bhagavad Gita's significance is extremely unique in Mahabharata, and whatever as a philosophical discussion that happens in Bhagavad Gita, because of time, I will not go into that. But you can see even the Varnashrama that we today discussed, you will see these examples in Mahabharata where a Grihastha, okay, is a guru to a brahmachari, but then that brahmachari is sent to a king, okay, the Kshatriya, for additional lessons. Or a Brahmana who is already educated, already ready to get his initiation, is sent to a lady sannyasi. There is a lady sannyasi in Mahabharata, okay, Sulabha, for additional knowledge. Or another Brahman person, before he gets his final initiation, is sent to a butcher, Dharmavada, okay. Or in another place, he's sent to a Vaishya, a businessman, to get his final lessons. So whatever is said about the Chaturvarnyam Maya Srishtam, or the beautiful doodle videos that you created, the philosophical aspect is elaborated in the Mahabharata, again, in an educational fashion, entertaining fashion, and the whole objective is to enlighten the society.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for that. If we have to ask which verse of all the verses in Bhagavad Gita reflects your research the best way, can you share one such verse and elaborate on that, please?
Okay. In fact, when Veena ji was discussing, initiating, and she was talking about the Samanvay and Abhyuday, I don't know if you noticed, but actually, I mean, I use this slide in my presentations, but when she used those words, Abhyuday, I just pulled that slide. I said, if I get a chance, I will show it to you guys. So if I can share.
Please feel free to go ahead. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to do that. And then I may request Bhavana ji again to, maybe if she's willing to sing that verse. So
Sure,
let me
definitely.
share that. Okay. So this verse, now interestingly, it comes in a slightly, not slightly, it may be seen as if it is the same pravrittim cha nivrittim cha. That is what Veena ji was elaborating there very beautifully. So we have two sides of it, and we need a viveka, the discriminating attitude, the logical attitude, to synthesize it well. So the verse that I find that very relevant to what I did last my 25 plus years of research is this verse. I'll quote the verse at the end here. Okay. But three things are very, very important. And I just show it as a visually, might be helpful to people to grasp it better. In any endeavor, we need these three things. So we need a Shraddha, we need Jidnyasa, okay, and we also need Samshaya, but Samshaya of a very unique kind. I mean, that's like a thin edge, walking on a thin edge. Kshurasya dhara nishita duratya, it's a double-edged sword. So let's start with that Samshaya, which is a doubt, a creative doubt. However, the Samshaya is not of a one kind. It can be the Samshaya of a mind, or it can be a Samshaya of a buddhi. For example, I just described there Masana Margashirshoyam, and I gave an explanation, and people might be listening. And one samshay, one doubt that they may have, and they have a right to have a doubt. It's very much a required ingredient. They will say, come on, how is this possible? Yeah, I don't think this makes sense. Okay, now that is the samshaya of a mind. Because after that, there is nothing to be done. The person has already made up his mind that this doesn't make sense, and I don't think this has a connection. But you don't have to accept it, but you can have a samshaya of a buddhi, which is to say, yeah, Nilesh said something, I'm not sure I understood everything, but is it really true that the Masana Margashirshoyam connects to the timing of the Mahabharata war going back 7,500 years ago? Is it really true that he mentioned that Mahabharata mentions Margashirsha as the first month of the year, or Sharad Rutu, the pre-autumn season, was considered the first part of the year. That is samshaya is a good one because it is going to lead to additional knowledge, additional work on that person's part. It's not over. It's the beginning of a journey of a knowledge. So that samshaya is good. Krishna is criticizing the samshaya of a mind. Okay, so we'll see that in a verse. If you do this, samshaya is a very great thing, and you find it, and therefore you go looking for it, it will lead you to jnana trupti, a satiation because of a knowledge. Then you need Shraddha. Now, Shraddha also Krishna says, and he talks about different Shraddha. Trivida bhavati Shraddha, Dehinamsa, Swabhavaja, Satviki, Rajasi, Chaiva, Tamasi, Chetitam Shrunu. There are everything three types or two types. So it's a Shraddha, which is what? Conviction, reverence, trust. But we also hear in science, trust but verify. So that's required. Also, the type of Shraddha that is required is a Satvik Shraddha and not a Tamasic Shraddha. What is the difference? In both cases, the Shraddha leads to infinite work, karma shakti. Okay, lot of activity can happen because of reverence, because of trust, conviction about something. But remember, your conviction can be very wrong. It can be a tamasic conviction, and it can lead to distraction, disaster in the world, right? So you should know what kind of Shraddha is required. That's what Krishna elaborates. And then the jidnyasa. Again, these all words are from the Bhagavad-Gita. Even the jidnyasa I mentioned, just idle curiosity is not enough. Kutuhala is a good beginning, but it's not enough. It should be saprayojana, and the samshaya should be sandigdha, that leads to the growth of knowledge. Saprayojana meaning, if you want to elaborate, you want to understand something, you should know why do you want to know. What could be the potential outcome? What is the benefit? And that kind of jidnyasa is required. If you do that, it leads to phala prapti. Okay, it actually leads to a outcome. It leads to an outcome. And back to Veenaji's point, so if the bottom left-hand corner, so pravrittimcha, nivrittimcha, both are good, both are required. But if you have a wrong outlook towards the Shraddha, Samshaya, and Jidnyasa, it can actually lead to destruction. And that's what Krishna is saying. On the other hand, the same three things, but if they are understood and implemented in the right manner, like a Sattva, Saprayojana, and a Samshaya of a Buddhi, it leads to Abhyudaya. One of our darshana, it defines the dharma, Yato Abhyudaya Nishreyasa Siddhi Sadharma. It's a Vaisheshika darshan. It says that. And just just ending that with this particular verse. This comes from a fourth adhyaya. Adnyascha ashraddha dhanascha samshayatma vinashyati. This is said in a somewhat negative fashion, which is said jnana is required, shraddha is required, and samshaya is required. Here it says, but if it's a samshaya of a mind, it leads to destruction. Okay, ignorance and not having reverence or trust in anything, and just a doubt of a mind will lead to destruction. That person won't be happy here, won't be happy after, won't be happy before. Doesn't matter what things you have. So I'll stop sharing this. But this is something that became very useful to me, almost a guidepost for everything I did in my research. So Bhavana ji.
Yes,
Wonderful.
I will definitely sing this. Yes. Ajnanah ja ashraddhadanah ja sanshaya atma vinashyantena nayam lokahasti na parah na sukham sanshayatmanah. संशय So, to summarize, the highest sadhak is one who possesses the knowledge of the scriptures and is also endowed with the firm faith. And the medium class would be the sadhak is the one who does not have the knowledge of the scriptures but is endowed with the faith towards the God and the Guru. And the lowest class, the sadhak, is one who neither has the knowledge or endowed with the faith. So we hope to go the other way, starting from the sadhak, and then through a spiritual guidance, through a guru, and celebrating the Guru Purnima, and then becoming the sadhak, the one with the aspirant, and improving our knowledge. Nilesh ji, it was a wonderful experience with you, and sharing of how Bhagavad Gita has been such a great influence in your life and your research work. I'm sure Nilesh ji has more than 10,000 subscribers who have purchased his books, and it is so widely accepted and spoken about in different arenas across the world. And we are so privileged and blessed to be having Nilesh ji as part of GITA-NRITYA today. Thank you again for your time, for your knowledge sharing, and for your relentless karma yoga that you are doing for the society and for the betterment of all our people here. We have just one question. Sorry, we have one audience question that we want to take. Because of the time, we'll just stick to one. Pradyumna, I think you have the question.
Right. We have an audience question here, Nilesh ji. So Shrikant ji is asking, the work that you do, sir, is using modern science to prove the dating of our great Indian epics. Is the belief increasing in the younger generation that Mahabharata and Ramayana are not myth, or is it reinforcing the power of modern science?
And I would say thank you to Srikanji for that comment. And this is a very recurring type of comments I get, and it truly delights me. I'm never tired of getting that comment because our modern generation, they definitely what they study, so they like to see these kind of evidences, and this is to increase the shraddha. That is for all of us. And I like to thank all of you. I mean, what a great illustrious company that I am in. Actually, I feel like I'm a nobody. When all the kinds of things that you guys are doing, the skill set that you have, I have none of that. But in the Varnashrama system, we are all individual pieces, and that creates a beautiful mosaic. So I'm very happy and humbled to be part of that small piece to create this beautiful mosaic. So thank you again for inviting me. I truly appreciate. Guru Bhyo Namaha, and best wishes to you, all of you, on the day of Guru Purnima.
Thank you so much. Veena ji, do you want to end with few words?
Actually, words are not coming out. I'm just awestruck with the kind of masterly presentation that Nilesh ji has done. We are truly blessed that we have you today, and you have given us some immeasurable amount of knowledge that we got to learn, and it's simply amazing. Thank you so much for this. I think one session is not enough with you, Nilesh ji. We need more and more sessions, because there is this old-fashioned myth, or you call it a bad habit for Indians to say what is there in India, what is our culture. We try to all the time ape the Westerners, but when we really look at our Sanatana Dharma, our own culture, we have so much to give to the world and also imbibe in our lives. And you have shown it. You have shown us the path, like in our Hindu scriptures or in any Sanatana Dharma. We only say, we don't prescribe, like you said. There is no prescription. It's only suggestion that is there. It's up to us to follow and lead a good life. And this is truly very, very useful and meaningful. Next week, we have Mohiniyattam renowned danceuse, Guru Dr. Neena Prasad, founder of Bharatanjali Academy of Indian Dances, going to have Mohiniyattam and how it has influenced her life. Bhagavad-Gita has influenced her life, and how Mohiniyattam takes from this great text is what we will see next week. So please join us in large numbers next week. And thank you, Shubharatri. Thank you so much, Bhavna, Pradyumna, and Shrikant Rajgopalji. Thank you so much. And we thank our sponsors, the High Commission of Indian Embassy, Carnatic Conservatory, then we have Samskara Bharati, India, and all the rest of the sponsors.
And NamVara Studios, Prasanna Keshava, and NamVara Studios, who has given us the theme song, the theme music, penned by Veena ma'am.
That he's going to be recording.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's thanks to the wonderful team, and Nilesh ji, you've only increased our curiosity now, right? So now it's time for us to be jignasu and go and learn more. Thank you so much, Nilesh ji, for joining. Thank you, Veena ma'am.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Shrikant.
सुमधुर वीणा मुरली संगीत नृत्य सम्मिलित सद्भावनार्पित सुमधुर वीणा मुरली संगीत नृत्य सम्मिलित सद्भावनार्पित
गीत नृत्य भगवद्गीत नृत्य गीत नृत्य
Thank you, Bhavna. Thank you, Pradyumna.
Thank you, Veena ma'am.
Thank
We
you.
see Shrikant ji with Kuti Papa.
So cute.
It's my 35-day-old. So
Oh, so nice.
introducing her to Gita-NRITYA today.
Bhavana, it's still recording.